I sometimes start with what is the easiest thing to do first so I can have a win. And I found that when you take that day break and you distance yourself from the feedback, when you come back to it the next day, it's actually so much easier to deal with. Imagine when you open your email and you see that there's an unread message from your advisor. And you know what that email says is giving you feedback on your latest dissertation chapter draft. Now, you know that you've been waiting about a month for this feedback. So you know that it's important for you to finish and you know it's important for you to read it. But when you click and you do what most folks do, you click the preview button on the Word document. So before you download it, you hit the preview button. And what's the first thing that you see? A sea of red lines across each page of the document. Now, at that point, your stomach probably drops, right? And I want to let you know that this experience is quite common. And it's an experience that most doctoral students have when you are having fears and trepidations about getting feedback on your work. Because one thing I do know, that can be the most nerve-wracking part of the process. And because of that, I think it's important to demystify feedback. Because imagine, what if getting feedback was not such a nerve-wracking process? What if feedback was just data that you could use to inform your work and actually move your writing forward? And because of that, I want to demystify this whole notion of feedback. And so in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to decode feedback that you're going to get. And I'm going to give you a clear and actionable strategy and process that you can use to address feedback, no matter how much that you get and no matter from how many people you get it from, so that you can make sense of the work and still get your dissertation done in record time. My name is Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of Done Dissertation, and our goal is to help you write and defend your dissertation in record time. Today's episode is sponsored by the Done Dissertation Velocity Coaching Program, which is centered to help you, the doctoral student, get through the dissertation process immediately. So if you're looking to have a fast-track way to navigate the process, make sure you lock in with us and you can go to www.velocitydissertation.com, or you can scan the QR code that is here on your screen. Now, when we get to feedback, one thing that I do know is that it is terrifying for many, many students. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that, because again, I had a similar approach to it when I was in my doctoral program. And so with that, I want to come to the board for a second. I'm going to show you all something because I think it's something we need to consider when we are navigating this process on how to deal with feedback. But before we get to how to manage the feedback, I want to talk through first, what are some strategies you can implement with your writing to possibly limit the amount of feedback that you get. So to minimize the feedback that you're going to get, I want you to remember this acronym. We're going to have another acronym, but for this one, it's going to be how to decrease the feedback that you're going to get, and that is REAP. And so this is my process that I thought through in order to deal with getting feedback on your work. So REAP stands for the R in REAP stands for read. Reading is such an important aspect of limiting the amount of feedback, because the more read you are in your area, the more ways you're able to connect different literature together to create all your arguments, the way you're able to pull from different sources to have a more informed perspective. Reading is at its foundation so important to your writing. And many students are saying, how much articles should I read? And I can't give you an exact number of how many you should read, but you should be able to address a question if someone asks you, who are the leading scholars on my work? What has their work explored? And then how do I see my research making a unique contribution to that current scholarly conversation? If you can have that conversation and think through that, you have indeed read enough. So you have to read. Reading is such a fundamental aspect and one that is highly overlooked. So now, once you read, so now what you're going to do is exercise your writing muscle. Because one thing I know is that in order to become a better writer, in order to limit the amount of feedback that you get, you have to practice, right? And so I give it a comparison to when I was a basketball player in college, right? So every day, I used to hate it, is that we had PIT. It was called personal improvement time. And so during like 12 to 1 p.m., every day, my goal is to get up like 500 shots from three, just to work on my jump shot. Maybe might be a one dribble pull up, depending on what I was working on that particular day. But I had a goal of something that I was working on during PIT. And so drastically improved from my freshman year. I maybe shot like, I don't know, 30% from three to like my sophomore year shooting 41% from three. And so like it helped drastically improve my percentage because of that constant repetition. But for many of us as writers, we don't always practice. We just say, oh, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write and that's going to be it. Like, unfortunately, many of us don't have that gift. I know I sure didn't. I had to write, rinse, repeat. I had to edit, refine, delete, come back to it. Like, writing is an iterative process. And so you kind of have to allow time for you to cook up the writing, right? And so you have to exercise your writing muscle. Many of us don't always exercise it and wonder why we struggle as academic writers. But if you do this, this will help limit the amount of feedback that you get because you will be more proficient writer. The second part that you're going to have to do is actually accept feedback. And I know today's episode is focused on this, but you have to be willing to accept the feedback because many of us are very sensitive about this work. And what it can feel like is that when you get feedback, it's almost like an attack on you as an individual. But no, it's not an attack on you in most cases. Like I notice some faculty sometimes that make things personal in this feedback. So I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But I'll say 95% of the time, the feedback is not about taking a critique of you, it's about a critique of the work. And so we sometimes have to distance ourselves from the work in that way, and it'll make things a lot easier. And you have to accept it because the one thing as faculty, and I can say this because I'm a department chair, I'm someone that actually has my own doctoral students that I advise. One of the greatest things that I can give my doctoral students is my feedback. You know, and what we do at Dissertation, our velocity coaching program, is we give students feedback on their work. And that's one of our greatest assets. And one of the things that really distinguishes us because of the great feedback we're able to give students. Because once you have feedback and you can embrace and accept it, you can move your dissertation forward. But if you don't do that, you'll just be turning around over and over again. So you're going to have to get very comfortable with accepting feedback. And here's a pro tip. If you're looking to go into the academy as a faculty member, this process does not end. If I could show you the reviews I get on my journal articles, you would be flabbergasted about the amount of critique that I get. You have to find ways to distance yourself from it. It's not about me, it's about the work. And trust me, these reviewers are nothing, compared to what you're already experiencing now in your dissertation. Like reviewers can sometimes take it up a notch and up a level. So just know that there's more coming, but because you are able to apply what I'm teaching you, you can apply it to your faculty role as well. Now, once we get through that, the last part is what I call the playground writing approach. So what I mean by playground writing approach is that a lot of times when I think about and I watch my daughter play on the playground, even when she couldn't talk that well as a little, toddler, they figured out ways to communicate what they wanted to do. And it was in a language that they could understand. What I want you all to start doing, and what I took from that experience and what I've started to do when I improved as a writer and when my articles started to get accepted for publication, I learned this as I was finishing my doc program, and I really refined it once I became a faculty member, during when I was pre-tenure, is that I found the simpler I wrote my ideas, the higher the acceptance rate was. And what that taught me is that sometimes, even because our ideas of what we're trying to communicate in our research are already very complex, we don't necessarily have to use language that makes it complex and adds an additional complexity to the work. And so if we can use a playground friendly, what I call writing approach, that means that let's use words that, we don't always have to use all of the jargon, right? Because sometimes jargon, the things get lost in the jargon. We can create our argument. If we can say it in 5 words that are very straightforward, why not say it in 5 versus 20 very nice flowery words that get you to where you're trying to go? And I know in academia, you read these journal articles and you read all this great prose that use all these descriptive words, and it's just the language just has the flower language. It's very just over the top. You don't necessarily have to communicate your work that way. Because remember, as academics and even as doctoral student, you're trying to communicate your research to a panel of experts. Don't let them get lost in the work. And this is something I learned from one of my professors, is that I was writing a paper. I was taking a philosophy class. And in this class, we had to apply a philosophy approach to our research area. And I was writing this paper, and I remember the professor, he wrote a note on there for me and said, "Ramon, you're out complexing yourself with the language." And that's when I turned on and said, oh, I need this to be simpler in the way I communicate. So again, this is going to be extremely important for you as you're thinking through this. So again, if you want to first lower the amount of feedback that you're getting, implement the REAP process. It will help you drastically improve as an academic writer. Now, you might be saying, you know what, Dr. Goins, that's all well and good, but then what happens when I finally do get feedback? And so, got an approach for you there. And I'm going to give you an acronym because, again, I think sometimes I think through acronyms as a way to organize what you're learning and in a way to be able to remember it. And then think about this, the word you're going to remember how to respond to feedback is crash. My mind, I was thinking I created it's like crash out, right? So instead of crashing out, you're actually going to implement crash. And this will be a way to deal with any feedback that you get. So let's imagine, for instance, you get the email that comes in. It has the feedback. First things first, you're going to check. And what I mean by check is that you're actually going to check all the feedback and read all the feedback in its entirety. You're going to read all the feedback. Trust me, this part is very challenging when you first do that preview on the email and you see a sea of red. Trust me, just go through this process. Just try me out one time. Let me know in the comments how it goes for you. I promise you it will change the game if you implement crash in terms of doing this. And the first step is checking the actual work and checking the feedback. Now, once you have checked the work and read through all the feedback, now's the time when you're going to react. And it's okay when you can have your sad time. Like, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to, at that point you might be angry. Yeah, I don't know what an angry face is, something like that. I don't know. You could be angry, like, I don't care about what y'all doing, like whatever it is, right? It's okay to react. It's okay to be mad. I still do this to this day. Like when I get feedback on my research, sometimes sometimes reviewers are ridiculous in terms of the feedback that I'm getting. And so, I get mad, I react. It's okay to react. Like that's part of the process, right? You're going to react. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, once you have your reaction, you're going to do the next step is going to be what we call absorb. You're going to absorb the feedback that you received. And what that looks like is actually during the absorbing process, you're actually going to take a 1-day break. 1-day break. You're going to take your 1 day, and I'm going to emphasize the 1, not a 10, not 100, not 1,000 day. You're just going to do 1-day break. During that break, you're going to do something unrelated to the dissertation. The reason why is that you're not stopping your thoughts about the feedback, but you're taking a step back. And I found that when you take that day break and you distance yourself from the feedback, when you come back to it the next day, it's actually so much easier to deal with. But when you're in your, reacting phase and you're just getting mad and upset, if you actually try, and you're just in your feelings and you take more than a day, you start taking weeks breaks, you might say, I'm never coming back to that. And I had a client recently who joined us who said, like, you know what, I had been sitting on feedback from my chair for 5 months. It was just about 5 months they had been sitting on that feedback because I just didn't know what to do with it. And the first thing we did when they came into the program, when they started during the onboarding call, was actually implement crash. It was like, let's go through all the feedback. Let's first figure out what's there. Let's read it all. Let's react to it, get mad. Let's absorb it, take your break. And then here's where the important parts come in. Now, the next part, what you're going to do is actually you're going to sort. So during the sorting process, you're going to take all the feedback. You're actually going to sort it by where is it in your document. A great way to do this is in an Excel spreadsheet. Is that imagine, and this is something we provide our clients in our program, is like having a column with the reviewer, or in this case, the committee member who suggested the feedback, a copy of what they actually want you to do. Where in the document do they want you to do it in? You can do the section of the document, which is probably better. What section? Because you may find, it's all feedback in my theoretical framework, or it's all feedback in my data analysis section. You're going to put it where it is in the document. You have a column for how you're going to respond to the feedback and what you did. And that's going to be your document. You're going to do that during the sorting phase because you're going to take all of that feedback and sort it. This is something that you can do when you have feedback from one faculty member, but also you can do it when you have multiple feedback from maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 folks. You can sort and organize it all, then you can deal with it. Because again, you may find that there's certain pieces of feedback that deal with one section. And by making one move with your feedback, you are able to address everyone's concern. Again, but you don't know this until you sort out the feedback, because a lot of you all are just letting it sit in that Word document and it's getting frustrating because you don't see all of it. And it just looks like a sea of red in your document versus you being able to recognize, all right, I know I have these 15 comments and I'm going to address them one by one. Now, the last step in crash is actually going to handle. And this is when you're going to handle the feedback. So you're going to take all that list of the things that you have sorted, you're going to address them one by one. And pro tip here, one of the ways to do this during the handling process is that I sometimes start with what is the easiest thing to do first so I can have a win. I always like to check something off. So what's the easiest piece of feedback I got? And I do that first. So I work through that, that feedback from like, usually I start with a couple of wins, then I maybe go to the hard one next. Just depends on how you want to structure it, but you're going to have to go through and do all of the feedback that you sorted. Then I'm going to give you, this is the pro tip, it's going to take this up a notch. If you implement this and execute, I promise you it will take you to the next level. What you're going to do is that anytime that you have addressed feedback, you are going to send your chair a letter back. The letter is going to outline what they asked you to do and what you have done and where is it in the document, along with the actual document with the feedback and changes. This will change the game because now what you've done, you've documented your process in terms of what you did. It's in somewhere where no one can refute it, and it actually keeps your chair and committee focused on what they need to look at. Because if you send the document back, and if your chair is this type of person where once they look at the document the second time, they're looking at it with brand new eyes and they're coming up with all this new stuff, that's not what you want. So what you want is actually to frame the conversation. And so what you're able to do is when you send your letter back, you say, hey, here's the things that you wanted me to do. Here's how I addressed them. Here's where they are. You can, in your feedback, go and actually look for those things in the document. That's what you really need to do. I promise you, if you execute this crash process top to bottom, you will be off to the races and you'll be able to handle feedback with ease. But what it's going to take is for you to do a little bit of work. I can't lie to you. And this is something that we help you deal with in our Velocity coaching program, because you may get feedback from your chair or advisor that's just like, I have no idea what they're trying to ask me to do. And that's what we do in our Velocity program to help folks, navigate this process and deal with feedback. Because it's one thing to manage it, like what I teach you with Crash, but it's another thing to interpret. So if you need help with interpretation of the feedback and you want to get that support, that hands-on support to navigate feedback and respond to your chair and know that you're headed in the right direction, you need to be in our Velocity coaching program. It is a extremely engaging experience to help you write and defend your dissertation right now. So if you're looking to get done fast and you want a proven process and model in order to do so, make sure that you tap in and go to www.velocitydissertation.com or scan the QR code that is here on your screen. And as you can imagine, I'm giving you all this content and strategy for free online, right? So you can only imagine what happens when you get into our program and you get into a community and you get into a premium program where we're able to really unpack what you need to do to finish. And so we want to work with people who are ready to invest in a premium solution for their problem. So if that is you, make sure you go to www.velocitydissertation.com. And with that said, I hope this episode was helpful. Make sure that you share this with folks. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and notification bell so that you know when new episodes are coming out. And with that said, I want to say thank you so much for watching and your continued support of Done Dissertation. And until next time, I wish you well and I wish you all a Done Dissertation. Take care.